Gostaria de retomar os nossos trabalhos agora de manhã.
Shall we resume our session? I want to thank David Farneth, who is the Assistant Director of the Getty Research Institute. For those of you who don't know it, it is an institute of art research in the U.S. Before working with the Getty Foundation, he developed the archives for Kurt Weill Foundation of Music and the DI Foundation in New York. He had published in the Encyclopedia of Art and called Archives and Art. He researches in the area of institutional documents, working with metadata and controlled vocabularies, development of digital collection and management of archives and presentation and preservation of electronic records. Muito obrigado, Ana.
Really a pleasure to be here in Sao Paulo with you. It's always been a personal fantasy of mine to visit your fascinating city. So I really would like to thank Gabriel and Anna and Silvana for the opportunity to participate in this important meeting. And I'd also like to thank their colleagues for helping to make this event happen. The title of my presentation today is Mapping the Future, Intersections in Archives, Library, and Museum Collection Management. Whereas Susie is representing the United States archival profession, I suppose I am representing just one organization, which is the J. Paul Getty Trust, which operates a museum, research institute, conservation institute, and foundation based in Los Angeles. Its programs are international in scope. This is an aerial photograph of the campus that was designed by the American architect Richard Meyer. The Getty Research Institute has a large art research library with over 1 million books and extensive special collections that include rare books, prints, photographs, and archives, which also include artist archives, scholar papers, and dealer archives. Three main topics will be explored in this paper. The first will be a survey of systems, policies, procedures, and standards used for the comprehensive management of archives and special collections. Using one case study, we will examine various management practices for archives and special collections within a museum setting and identify approaches that may be different from usual museum practices. Second, we will consider some benefits and challenges of using controlled vocabularies and various forms of aggregated searching across diverse data repositories. And finally, we will compare metadata standards across various collection management systems and consider ways to move forward in unifying both metadata and access. For this survey, which will kind of march through here, I would like to take you through a 5-step workflow for managing a new collection, from acquisitions, accessioning, arrangement and description, reference and access, and the ongoing collection management functions. As a case study, we will apply this workflow to the papers of Alan Capro, an American painter, assemblagist, and pioneer in performance art, who lived from 1927 to 2006. He helped to develop the environment and the happening in the late 1950s and 1960s. Eventually, Capro shifted his practice into what he called activities. He is credited with influencing Fluxus, performance art, and installation art. The Getty Research Institute acquired his papers in 1998, and they comprise 64 linear feet of project files, correspondence, performance scores, photo documentation, audio and video recordings, writings, and printed materials. Acquisition and appraisal are the processes for making the decision about whether to acquire a new collection. At the Getty Research Institute, the acquisition of any new non-institutional collection must be decided by a collections development council comprised of archivists, registrars, catalogers, conservators, and administrators. This is a fairly open and a collaborative process. The staff person recommending the acquisition devotes a significant amount of time researching the collection and preparing an acquisition approval form, which details all of the various types of information found here. The staff person then presents the collection to this council, often showing significant items to enhance the presentation. The council makes a decision to acquire the collection or not based upon the report, the presentation, and the group discussion. The Capro archive, for instance, was acquired because it was mostly complete, had clear ownership, had research synergies with other archives, especially those devoted to Fluxus and performance art, and had obvious potential for both publication and exhibition. Susie's already talked about deeds of gift a bit. After agreement is made for the institution to acquire a collection, deeds of gift and/or purchase agreements are written and signed to document the terms and conditions of the donation or purchase. The deed of gift may transfer to the museum any copyrights in the materials owned by the donor or specify access restrictions. Sample deeds of gift can be found in most manuals devoted to archives management. All of the documents related to the acquisition must be maintained in a secure but accessible permanent acquisitions file. This file may or may not be available to researchers, depending on the policy of the institution. Staff members will refer to it regularly in the course of all of their future work on the archive. Even though our case study involves acquiring an artist's papers, I wanted to insert a few words about the process for appraising and accessioning museum records, which involves surveying the records across the museum and then developing a records retention schedule that defines record-keeping responsibilities and the amount of time that records should remain in museum offices before they are transferred to the archives. The institution might also develop appraisal guidelines to help archivists determine which records are important for documenting the institution's activities, accomplishments, intellectual property, and influence. Archival accessioning asserts intellectual and physical control over the records, and the processes are similar to registering museum objects. Because of these similarities, some institutions use the museum's collection management system for accessioning archival collections. The Getty's collection management system is the museum system, or TMS for short, which again is the same system used in Philadelphia. The rules for data entry have been adjusted for certain fields to accommodate collection level records. But as you can see here, there are a number of empty fields because they simply do not apply to collections. Generally, the information captured in an accession record might include all of these types up here, which I won't read, but I'll pause for a second. And some information from the collections management system is available to all staff through a web interface. Providing access to accession information for museum objects and archival collections in the same system is beneficial on several levels. It exposes collections to museum curators, and it encourages the use of archival materials in museum exhibitions. It also permits the archivist to use the collection management modules for item-level object tracking, exhibition management, and the maintaining of conservation records. On the negative side, it is often difficult to map metadata from an archival description system to a museum collection management system. The process can be a time-consuming, cut-and-paste operation with additional adjustments required to accommodate the rules of the museum system. In addition, the museum system will usually require more item-level description than is available in the archival description system. Archivists refer to processing to include all of the steps needed to prepare a collection for access and for research use. Arrangement and description are the first two of those steps. Researchers are better able to understand and use collections more effectively if the repository follows consistent policies and procedures. Arrangement is an art unto itself because it involves organizing the materials into a logical order while remaining true to the archival principles of provenance, original order, collective description, and levels of control. We don't have time today to go into each of these principles, but they are the core concepts that guide collection level description. Archival repositories usually have an internal processing manual to guide staff in making decisions related to physical arrangement and processing. Archivists are usually very generous in sharing their internal manuals with colleagues. For large collections, archivists usually prepare a processing plan that defines the collection arrangement and plan of work. I would like to diverge again from the Capro case study to mention the archives of Harold Zeeman, an influential European curator who is best known for curating documented exhibitions in Kassel, Germany, and also large survey exhibitions such as the Venice Biennale. This photo shows one room of Zeeman's archive as he kept it in Switzerland, and this is one of 7 rooms, so it's huge. It is the largest collection the Getty has ever acquired, and it took 4 large shipping containers to move it. This photo here shows about half of the collection after it was moved to Los Angeles. Without a processing plan and established processing guidelines, it would be impossible to tackle a collection of this size. For archives of over 3 linear feet, the Getty creates a detailed finding aid or inventory. The information included in the finding aid is defined by describing archives a content standard, or DAX, which is published by the Society of American Archivists. The data encoding standard is Encoded Archival Description, or EAD. I should mention that in the published version of this talk, you'll find all of the URLs and links for all of these references. Here is the first page of an online finding aid for the Capro papers, which is a descriptive summary that just provides a brief description of the collection. Then there's also a biographical note that tells you tells you more about the life and work of the artist. The scope and genre, scope and content note provides more details about what's found in the archive. The indexing terms provides controlled access points. Here, the subjects come from the Library of Congress Subject Authority. The genre-informed terms come from the Art and Architecture Thesaurus, and the contributors conform to the Library of Congress Name Authority. The administrative information section provides a citation and other useful information. In this case, we learned that 435 books from this archive were transferred to the library. And the container list provides what's really the most useful tool to the researcher, because it tells you more details about what is in the contents of each box and folder of the archive. These finding aids, which I have shown you an example of here, were created in a free open source software application called Archivist Toolkit, which automatically provides all of the XML encoding for the data. This is a top-level data entry screen for the Capro collection. The left-hand navigation shows the structure of the finding aid. From this screen, one uses tabs and radio buttons to enter all of the information and produce reports. Staff usually require 2 days of intensive training to learn how to use the Archivist Toolkit, provided they already know the basics of creating an EAD finding aid. Here is a small example of the XML data that is output by Archivist Toolkit. Institutions use various methods for rendering this XML EAD file online. Some use style sheets to produce static HTML files, while others use systems to automatically create the HTML files whenever they're requested. At the Getty, all archives and special collections are also represented with a MARC record in the library catalog, here again in the same way that Philadelphia does theirs. These records also contain links to the finding aid and to digitized versions of the collection. Finding aids are also accessible from an alphabetical browsable list on the website. The Getty's finding aids are in a system that permits keyword searching across all finding aids. So a search on Capro shows that his name appears in seven different archives. One of them is the Lawrence Alloway papers. The links then take you to the place in each finding aid where Capro's name appears. In this case, we see that the Alloway papers can contain additional scores and letters by Capro that are not part of his own papers. Some people do not understand the structure of finding aids and find them very difficult and cumbersome to use. We are hoping that new rendering software will, in the future, make them much more user-friendly. The Archives of American Art, which is part of the Smithsonian Institution, has developed a much nicer online interface to their finding aids. It also includes links to very practical information that people need for accessing and using the collection. No discussion about the management of archives would be complete without mentioning digital collections. The Getty has a digital repository, which is very much a work in progress. There are thousands of images in it, but the user interface is, again, cumbersome and difficult to read, as you can see here. From links from the library catalog take the user to this metadata page shown here for the digital collection. The metadata page then links to the actual digital images. The left-hand navigation maps to the container list in the finding aid. This type of presentation is intended to give the user the same experience he or she would have looking through a physical folder of the materials in the reading room. Therefore, it maintains the context of each of these separate digital files. The website also has pages that guide users into digital collections. Here, they can be browsed by title, medium, or subject. Due to lack of time, I won't go into much detail about policies pertaining to reference and access. They are easily found on our website. the main reference and access policies are application for access, reading room rules, and rights and reproduction policies and fees, which I assume we'll touch upon again tomorrow. We also keep we also keep information about readers and the materials they use in a reader database, which is just in FileMaker Pro. Research information about copyright in the collections is kept in a separate rights database. Both of these are available just to our staff. It is the Getty's policy to create a record in the library catalog for every new acquisition within 2 weeks of the date of receipt. These are usually brief collection level records, and they are also in MARC format. This is the best source of information for new acquisitions for the public and also for staff who do not have access to the official accession records. Most archival repositories restrict access to new collections until they have been at least minimally processed and cataloged. This is the one management policy that gives us the most difficulty, especially when high-profile collections arrived and are at the same time publicized in the media. Museum curators, scholars, and the public then expect access to them right now. Two recent examples at the Getty were the Julius Schulman collection of iconic photography of mid-century modernist architecture, and the Robert Mapplethorpe archive, which includes much of the art he produced before he started making photographs. To help with this problem, we are using the website to inform the public about when collections will be available for research. The special research guides, like this one for Julius Schulman, help researchers to understand all of the researchers that are available to them, both internally and externally. The entire Getty organization shares the same digital asset management system, which is OpenText Artesia, which allows the museum and the library to share images with each other, as well as with the other museum offices, such as publications and the web team. This image repository is not yet open to the public because of copyright restrictions in many of the images. The descriptive metadata in the system is designed largely to meet the needs of exhibitions and publications, and does not conform to library or museum standards. So we have a big disconnect here between the images in this repository and in our other tools. This is because we do not have the staff to create standards-based item-level cataloging for all images. The records include a large amount of administrative metadata as well as rights metadata. But the system also does an excellent job of automating the process of delivering digital images to scholars, other museums, publishers, and the curators of external exhibitions. It resizes and exports the images. It prepares a caption list with thumbnail images, and it generates an invoice for any fees that are charged. Museum staff and archive staff can share many of the same policies and procedures for functions, such as exhibition loans, conservation, security, and disaster recovery. Records of conservation treatments are still a problem in the U.S., in large part because the conservation profession, I think it's fair to say, has not agreed on standards of transparency and also on the description. Maybe you have the same problem. Okay. The archives should have a security policy that documents where collections are stored, how they are tracked, what is expected of staff and researchers, and also how theft is handled should it ever happen. Comprehensive guidelines for writing a security policy can be found in the ACRL RBMS guidelines regarding security and theft in special collections. Again, you'll find links to all of this in the published paper. Two of the ways to improve research access across libraries, museums, and archives is to use controlled vocabularies consistently, and to build tools for federated searching across data repositories. Many of you may know about the Getty's vocabularies, which have been in existence for 20 or 25 years. The Art and Architecture Thesaurus, or AAT, the Thesaurus of Geographic Names, and the Union List of Artist Names. A fourth is in development, the Cultural Object Name Authority. This vocabulary will attempt to provide an authoritative record for every work of art and architecture. This is a huge undertaking that will rely on metadata provided by museums from around the world. The Getty has been working with partner institutions internationally to foster translations of the Art and Architecture Thesaurus and to share information about how institutions are using the vocabularies in new and creative ways. Here is a 2010 photos of partners from Brazil, Chile, Germany, Italy, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Taiwan, and the U.S. This group just met again last week to continue this work. More and more records in the Art and Architecture Thesaurus now have terms in languages other than English. We've also been giving thought to various ways of improving comprehensive results by combining searches across the various vocabularies. These vocabularies have been widely adopted by museums, but far less so by libraries and archives. We are hoping to solve this problem with a number of initiatives. The first is to publish APIs that will make it easier for institutions to incorporate vocabulary terms into their cataloging records. We also plan to provide guidance for integrating the vocabularies into search tools so that they work on the back end, not on the front. We are also hoping to facilitate the integration of the Getty vocabularies into new cloud-based library cataloging systems and into archives description tools, such as the Archivists Toolkit. We have mid-range plans to convert the vocabularies into open-linked data. This will make them freely available to all and will solve, we hope, the problem of maintaining current and accurate data. One other important initiative is the Virtual International Authority File, which provides aggregated access across many different authority files of different countries. A search in VIAF on Tarsila do Amaral will find entries in 6 authority files with links to the native records in each file. And I don't know if you can see it here, but I apologize for the wrong title, which Gabriel has informed me is not the title used in the catalog raisonné. So I just stole that off of the internet. I'm sorry for that. And then here is the ULAN record, which gives all of the variant forms, all of the known variant forms of her name. One other way to provide integrated access is with federated searching. There are two principal methods for achieving this. The first is a meta search of distributed metadata records. The service provider broadcasts a search to different repositories and then aggregates the results. Links usually take the user back to the native repository. One example of this is artslibrary.net. There are several disadvantages to this method. The search often is slow to execute, and the results can be inconsistent. The second method is federated searching of physically aggregated metadata records. The records can be either contributed or harvested. The service provider provides the metadata processes the metadata into a common schema as much as possible and places it in one database. The examples of this are traditional union catalogs such as OCLC's WorldCat and Oyster, as well as new cross-repository search services being developed by the Smithsonian and the Getty. This approach is more work for the service provider, but it provides for quicker searches and more consistent results, although not perfect ones. Museums that have many metadata repositories are starting to experiment with using federated techniques to search across all of them with one search. The Smithsonian is now providing unified access to collections held by its 19 museums and 9 research centers, with data contributed from 56 different data repositories. A search on the name Alan Capro across all of these Smithsonian collections yields these results. You can see 28 books, 24 archival materials, and it also shows which of the repositories you can find those in. The Getty Search Gateway aggregates access to just 4 data repositories: the library catalog, the museum collection, digital collections, and archival collections. A search on Monet retrieves 971 8 visual materials, which in this case are actually videotapes, paintings, and the other things you see here. And then those links take you into those systems. These tools are great time savers for the researchers, and faceted indexing allows researchers to display the search results in almost a limited variety of ways. But the results are still very inconsistent for several reasons. The metadata rules and standards have changed over time. Some collections have substandard or incomplete metadata. Access points assigned no longer have meaning to current day scholars, and scholars working in specific disciplines, such as art, now want more detailed access points than we've had in the past. Some of these problems can be resolved by improved metadata mapping. Others require intensive data editing to achieve the desired level of standardization. So while these tools are a step forward, we still have a long way to go. As you can see from this chart, libraries, archives, and museums are using many different systems and metadata standards to manage collections. I've tried to map on the left-hand side the basic functions, and then each of the different systems that these repositories used. Some of these standards are based on cataloging and access, but others pertain to the workflow and processes needed for managing physical collections. We need to have a better understanding of the similarities and differences in metadata standards used by different types of cultural heritage institutions in order to develop new ways for integrating the management of hybrid and complex archives. Many specialists are working to refine metadata schema within the separate areas of archives, museums, and libraries, but not enough people are working on the problem across these different professions. OCLC research has been trying to find solutions to the problems of cooperation and metadata sharing. The 2008 publication, Beyond the Silos of the Lambs, collaborations among libraries, archives, and museums, provides advice for fostering collaboration across these 3 unique cultures. And the Museum Data Exchange Project established infrastructure for standards-based metadata exchange for the museum community. We now need similar projects for the exchange of metadata across libraries, museums, and archives. The first thing we can all do is become more familiar with these various metadata standards. As a starting place, I would like to recommend to you Jen Riley's recent compendium called Glossary of Metadata Standards. It provides short and concise descriptions of each standard, and it's also free on the web. She also provides a wonderful visualization of all of these metadata standards currently in use. The Getty's Introduction to Metadata is also a free free online publication, and it discusses standards mapping and federated searching. I have a few personal observations for how we might move forward with improving integrated access. First of all, is we know that scholars are asking for better discipline-specific tools. We need to listen more closely to the needs of our users. Standards must read lax a bit whenever they can, and they also have to be adapted for the digital age. They must evolve and come together. In the digital age, I think one can argue that access is more important than detailed description. We also need ways to find ways to combine the power of controlled vocabularies with full text searching. We must also integrate controlled vocabularies into search processing tools and learn how to search multiple vocabularies at once to yield more comprehensive search results. We also need to solve this problem of multilingual access. Translations of controlled vocabularies are critical, but we also need to experiment more with machine translation to see what level of accuracy can be achieved. I am not arguing for one or the other, but for using both. Most of our metadata standards are used for a collection, description, and access. We need to incorporate them into broader standards that serve our everyday collection management functions also. And then, of course, the challenge of item-level description versus collection-level description will remain with us for some time to come. And I think it provides still the most interesting area for further research. You can also characterize this as the argument between context and content. This is an exciting time to be working in museum archives. Our collections hold a huge amount of research potential, and many people are just starting to discover them. These archives are also relevant to a large array of disciplines. As professionals who manage hybrid collections, we have the opportunity and the necessity for leveraging technology to integrate access within our institutions, between our institutions, and across international borders. We are uniquely positioned to play a leading role in linking textual knowledge to cultural objects, thus providing a much greater understanding of the world in which we live. Thanks.
I would like to once again thank David Farneth. I'd like to invite Susan Anderson to the head table, and we're going to open up for questions. David, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, Susan, can you hear me? Can she hear me? Not yet. Can you hear me now, Susan?
Hello? Yeah. It's fine. Yeah, I mean, you're listening to a translation, right?
Can you hear me, Susan? Oh, good. I don't see any arms or hands raised. And now, oh, here's Andre. He apparently has a question. I will ask you to introduce yourselves before you ask your questions. André, from Brasilia University. The question I'd like to ask both of Susan and David, how do you deal on your day-to-day as you organize archival material with the pressure from other professionals who cannot work very well the question of context, always imposing the dictatorship of content, not only for the recovery of some data or information, but as if the content made all the organization of whatever is archival. I don't know if you got the question clear. If it is clear? Is it clear to you? Otherwise,
Susan, would you like to start?
Sure. Let's see. Okay. Please excuse me. This is the first time I've worked with simultaneous translation. Appreciate your patience. It's very interesting, this divide between content and context, and we're doing our best to bridge it. Usually what we try to do, at least at my institution, because I am the only full-time permanently employed archivist, so I have to manage many different things. I try to work very closely with our researchers when they come in advance or before they come to the archives. We conduct a reference interview. Usually we chat on the phone, or in advance they send me a checklist of collections they would wish to access. If I need more specific information to map their research needs to the collections that we have, I explain what our finding aids are all about, and usually with a little bit of negotiation and an encouragement, I can get them to look at our descriptive tools. And if that still doesn't work when they come on site, we then continue the conversation. So in many ways, I function as the translator, as the bridge. Fortunately, I know my collections pretty well. I've been working at the Art Museum for 13.5 years, so I have a fair amount of subject-specific knowledge, and I can usually map from the specific items that they're looking for content-wise into the overall contextual arrangement of the archival collections. Also, fortunately, our researchers are fairly well educated, fairly savvy, especially those who are working on serious research projects such as dissertations or books or exhibitions. They've already done a fair amount of legwork and are familiar with working in archives. A lot of, also what I try to do is outreach to students because, believe it or not, our biggest user group happens to be graduate students. So I always do a lot of training sessions with our summer interns, as well as anybody who first comes to the archives and has never really worked with primary source materials. I always sit down, help them navigate a finding aid, So it's very hands-on, meant to be user-friendly. And I certainly hope I'm addressing your question, but a lot of it just has to do with you extending yourself at the reference table. That's where I spend the majority of my time, and just working as much as possible to get them to map their needs onto the way our collections have been arranged. Mm-hmm.
This again is a difficult problem, and you know, I'm sure everybody in Brazil as well as in the U.S. Well, maybe not in Brazil because I hear that your economy is very good, but ours is not so good, and so we have a lot less staff now to do this kind of detailed at item level cataloging, so that it's just out of a practical necessity that people are starting to, you know, understand and to understand what you know, what contextual description means, and it's just teaching them new ways of thinking about how they would locate things, so that rather than knowing exactly the you know, artist or a title of what they're looking at, they start thinking, okay, what sort of a collection might I find something like that in? So it's really sort of training their own thought processes, I think, at the same you know, at the same time. But as Susie said, this this also tends to put lots more work on the archivists who know what's in the collection in order to mediate access and help the researcher find what they're looking for. I think that, you know, in the very long-term future, I am hoping that archivists can provide the sort of overall context to these archives, and then there will be various sorts of trusted social tagging systems in place for those people who want to, you know, tag each document at, you know, with whatever terms are meaningful to them. So, and I think this is also better for this cross cultural work that we are all working on, because one document means one thing to one researcher and a totally different thing to some other researcher. So I don't feel it's the archivist's role to say it's one or the other, or the thousand other ways you might look at that photo or, you know, or a document. I think that's not our job, and I think that's the job of the scholars and the historians, and that we need to give them the tools that they can do that with. So that's how I see where the future is going, but you know, it's just sort of a dream world at this point.
Alguém se habilita? Então, acho que eu vou aproveitar.
Solange from Museum Paulista. Question for David. You've mentioned your concern regarding more friendly interfaces for web searches. I'm thinking about researchers on the web. I'd like to know if there is any research on the way as to how the web researcher proceeds, their routine, if there are any search and access standards This is one thing. The other is whether there is any intention of collaborative registration, if cataloging, if, for example, researchers could actually collaborate with online cataloging.
There are various user studies and more now that are surveying researchers and how they are actually interacting with these online resources. I didn't bring specific references with me, but I could share some of them. There's the British organization is doing a lot of study in terms of researchers, and the acronym I always mess up, but maybe Hans can tell it. It's JISC. Right. Right. Okay. Good. Well, I had a little bit of it right. They've issued several very interesting studies, as also has OCLC, which I mentioned, which is a big library consortium in the U.S. They've done a lot of user studies. So there is now, in the last 5 years, there's been there are some studies that we can look at that tell us how researchers are working. The second part of your collection, I think, had to do with a collaborative projects for cataloging. And I think you also mentioned in an online online and environment. We are very interested in that at the Getty, and I know Hans and his colleague are also very interested. You'll hear more about that later. Our biggest barrier there is finding the right technology tool that we can kind of lay over our cataloging, so that we can capture this collaborative work, and also so that people who use it can have some notion of the source of where this other cataloging came from, so that they can decide if they want to trust it or not. And I think that's one of the hardest, hardest barriers. Everyone's anxious to try it, but I don't think we've got tools that are really available for us. We are trying to use a Drupal repository right now for this, but it's more research and development right now, rather than something that's really usable.
Bom, eu permito mais uma.
We have time for one more question. So if nobody wants to ask any questions, I'll do it. Thank you for your wonderful replies. Another question that interests us all, especially in the work we try to do here at the Pinacoteca: contemporary art and its documents, and where should those documents be in the museum? Because we know that not always this will produce an object in the traditional format we're used to see in the museum. So the artists that we have in our collection, the works that are a work of art, however, what criteria do you use to store this kind of a more complex material that you get in contemporary art? Is there a reference? Is there any material to guide us how to deal with contemporary art documents and files in a museum?
Eu posso aproveitar e emendar na pergunta do Gabriel?
Just
Eu acho que para
along the same lines,
lidar com o repositório do que os artistas
more than dealing with the repository of modern artists' production, do you already see an impact
de catalogação de
on the review of
diferentes
the files and the catalog
justamente dessa
organization of a museum because of those new contemporary art practices?
uma coleção de arte contemporânea?
I do not work with contemporary art in my case. I do modern art.
É claro que
So I think a lot about it. Now, those new contemporary practices make me revisit this collection with a different idea as an art historian, how to catalog, how to do the indexation in a museum.
My turn? Okay. Goodness sakes. Another interesting question. Questions. I think with, as far as determining where artist records should reside in the museum, is that sort of the gist? You have to start where you are. Every institution is different. I wish I could be an omniscient, all-knowing archivist and provide a silver bullet that will allow you to draw together and capture all of the records that you're needing to properly document your collections. But I think it's the case, or we have to take it on a case-by-case basis, depending on your institution, depending on the relationships you've developed with your curators, your administration, how they perceive the archives, how much education you need to do to make your intentions and priorities clear. Usually it starts with conversations. It's very simple. You know, creating a meeting, a committee, a user group. In our particular case, as I mentioned in my paper, we had this wonderful opportunity. You know, basically the goose laid the golden egg, and we had all this marvelous funding to process records and do it the right way for once. My institution is not very well endowed, so this was our opportunity to really come together and process these marvelous collections correctly. And people really rose to the occasion. But the basis of everyone playing nicely with each other, it was because we kept pursuing a dialogue. We wouldn't take no for an answer. We wanted very much to solicit our colleagues' opinion. And, hello? And in turn, because that was where we started to get curatorial and administrative feedback, they felt immediately invested in the project. And then we, in turn, offered our professional expertise. So it was a dance, it was a dialogue. And if you are not yet at the point where you can pull together that committee, it's an opportunity to then see how other institutions are handling this type of material. We spoke about this yesterday. That's why the Museum Archives section of the Society of American Archivists is such a close-knit community, because we're always in touch with each other. And looking at the marvelous attendance here, it looks like you also have a very vital supportive community. So I think that talking amongst your peers, seeing how they handle similar situations at their institutions, how they've been able to make inroads with their colleagues, it can all provide some very helpful insights that are quite informative. I should also say that with contemporary art and materials that could conceivably fall into either the art category or the archives category, another relationship you should take very seriously is that with your conservators, if you have a conservation staff. I know that at my museum, you know, for instance, if we're thinking of loaning a very fragile photograph, you know, to a, you know, international venue, it's going to, you know, get a lot of handling, a lot of travel, you know, possibly exposure to different climates, whatnot. The conservator's advice is sort of like the final word. So while they'll certainly consider the various factors, you know, the importance of lending an image, of it being part of a particular exhibition, you know, my opinion as an archivist, because I have had preservation and conservation training, ultimately, you know, the conservator's opinion is very important. So I think that's another factor to consider in negotiating the placement of these materials, is kind of looking to the authorities within your institution and seeing how much room there is for negotiation, but then when someone has leveled the final opinion, you know, to take it gracefully and realize that you need to pick your battles sometimes, and that fortunately archivists are very patient people. We take the long view as far as history is concerned, so, you know, we can always resume the conversation at a later date when perhaps circumstances have shifted and it's a better time for that conversation.
I don't think I have a whole lot to add. I think it just comes down to, often it can come down to just very practical issues. Who is able to best take care of this material and do the right thing by the collection and not worry about, you know, it's mine or it's yours. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's sometimes very hard getting there. And I think, like you said, that if you can sit down and have a reasoned discussion based on intellectual, you know, issues, that, you know, it's much easier getting to that place about, you know, where it makes most sense, as you showed in your one slide with the magazine cover or the journal cover. Mm-hmm. But I also see in my own institution that we are getting works of art in archives for which we don't have any curatorial department in our museum to actually take ownership of them, which means we have to start functioning like a museum for the first time, and that's throwing us into, you know, we don't necessarily have the skill set or the resources or the I think it's resources for the most part to sort of take care of these things in a museum type way, but but they are integral to the archive, and there's no other place that is really wanting them. So you feel like you need to do the right thing, but it gets difficult, and you just do the best that you can using the knowledge you have. But I think your question was more to how do you sort of negotiate where things go. I always take a very practical viewpoint towards this. We have this we have this expression in the U.S. which is what's in it for me, which means what do I get out of this? So you try and show your museum colleagues how they can benefit, maybe by having something in the archives, or maybe you would benefit by having something taken care of in the museum. So you're always looking for that, what gives people what they need in order to do their job better.
Bom, eu agradeço ao David.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Susan.
De fazer a pausa para o nosso almoço.
We will now adjourn for lunch.
Nós teremos de volta
We will come back